Good evening, everyone. Welcome into Vol Society Live on this Tuesday night, the third Tuesday in October. My name is David Morrison from the Vol Society, here to bring us another episode of Vol Society Live as we're piling on in. And I'm telling you what, you're already hitting the chat room already. Toby giving us a big yo, back to you, Toby. Shane saying, go Vols. Just be like Toby and Shane just did on, whether you watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. The chat room is open. Leave your comments and your questions. Our founder Brad's already in the chat room. Says, get your cigars ready for Saturday. And Toby saying, I hate Alabama. Yeah, absolutely. May have to play that song this week. But yeah, this is your show. This is not just me rambling on for an hour. For 1 hour each and every Tuesday, this is your show. This is your chance to be heard on our social media pages. Your comments, your questions, your score predictions, where you're watching this from tonight. This is your chance to be heard. And I'll give some shout outs who's already liked the Facebook page early on. So fire away with your comments and your questions. Like I said, this is your chance to be heard, and I will read your questions and comments. Early shout outs on the Facebook page. Shout out to Linda, Toby, and Pam leaving us a like and a love. All right. Already got a first score prediction for Toby going 17-10 Tennessee for this Saturday. Shout out to my dad. Also watching along. And Brad's wondering where everybody's watching us from tonight. But like I said, this is a big game coming up Saturday. We all know what's in store. Third Saturday in October, Tennessee, Alabama. Saturday, 3:30 Eastern Time, 2:30 Central on CBS. Tennessee comes into this game 5-1. Alabama 6-1. Vol 17th ranked in the country. Alabama number 11. Like I said, we really talked about we kind of talked in depth about this on the podcast, although went off the rails. Definitely go back, check it out if you have the patience to deal with us on that one. Let's see here. Go back to your comments here. Shane says the only thing that makes me feel comfortable is our defensive front, and he's watching us up in Bristol. Kevin's giving us a big go Vols, as Bruce would say, go dang Vols. Yeah. Brad says if Joe plays decent, we win. Shout out to my grandparents watching us. Toby's wondering, is Georgia in trouble now? That's a good question, Toby. For those who didn't know, Brock Bowers, the talented tight end for the Georgia Bulldogs, got hurt in the Vanderbilt game. Had a very similar injury to what happened with Cedric Tillman last year. Had surgery, and he's out for 6 weeks. So that is definitely a concern for Georgia, and definitely looks like he's not going to be playing when Georgia comes to town in November. So something to keep an eye out on there, Toby, and let's see how Georgia kind of responds from that. It's going to be very interesting to see. But it's concerning a little bit. But hopefully we can catch them on a bad day, either win. Let's see here. Justin, says running about all day long. Yeah, absolutely. Shane says Brock was a huge part of their passing game. Definitely a big, big loss. Absolutely, especially especially just kind of they've been. I don't want to say they've been vanilla this year on offense, but they definitely have not really had that spark like they've had before. Toby says USC overrated. All right. If you're talking about, both Southern Cal and South Carolina definitely are. Learned a lot about that. But yeah, like I said, this is a big game coming up. Like I said, continue your comments and your questions. My big concern is the vertical passing game. Obviously this past Saturday against Texas A&M, very happy with the running game. Especially Texas A&M only giving up 84 rushing yards per game. But Tennessee ended up clipping that right at the end of the first quarter, going 87 at the end of the first quarter. So I was happy for that. Happy for our defensive performance. Happy we got after Max Johnson throughout the whole game. And then happy for our special teams, including D. Williams. D. Williams is a big part of that win for us. So definitely, it was definitely a big win. But I think that's my big concern is Joe Milton only went 100 yards passing Saturday against Texas A&M, and that's got to clean up better. You can't. You're not going to win too many of those games like you had Saturday against Texas A&M, and especially a big game coming up like Alabama. Let's see here. Continuing on, Brad says Vols are going to get Georgia this year. Brad is going with the upset. I'm still not on that side yet, but we'll see. Parker says Nico's time to shine in the passing game in Alabama. Well, it's definitely going to be. It's definitely going to be a very. This is definitely going to be Joe Milton's game, and I'm not saying good or bad, but this is definitely a game that a lot of concern about Joe Milton is going to maybe answered or hopefully silence the critics. This is a huge game for him coming up, and then the following week against Kentucky, 2 back-to-back road games. If anything happens, then yeah, you might see Nico probably by November, but we shall see. Um, this is a big game for Joe. Let's see here. Continuing on, Toby says Alabama will have the refs on their sides. That is a concern, man. If we get the same crew from that A&M game, I don't know. Let's see here. Shane says defense won that game. It's really that simple. Yeah, very much so. Uh, that will be. Grace says that will be next year. Sorry, that's no problem. Uh, Brad says, anyone else sick of Milton's cocky attitude on the field? I'm not liking it. He just needs to play ball. Yeah. And I just now saw Shane's comment. Definitely don't like his body language at times, especially after he messes up and he's smiling. Yeah. I mean, that's, I noticed that back in the Florida game. Like, I can't remember if it was an incomplete pass or an interception. He just kind of went, just very, very uncharacteristic you want to see from your SEC starting quarterback. And I don't want to say, I don't want to say, well, Hendon Hooker would, I mean, Hendon, yeah, he would have not done that, but, he's not here anymore. But, it's just definitely a 180 difference in quarterbacks we've had from last year to this year, especially kind of just kind of a lack of leadership for the most part. Let's see. Tracy says, I think they have been holding Joe Milton on a short leash. Yeah, I do too. And you notice it every week. I mean, they've watered down the playbook to what he can kind of run, and we're not really seeing Josh Heupel's offense capitalize at a full level, especially now in this season. And even some of the simple plays Joe is still struggling with, and it's just, unfortunately, I think that's just kind of how he is at this point, and and I think that's the big concern going into this game on Saturday, and especially you got a guy like Kool-Aid McKinstry, right across the other side of the field on that talented Alabama defensive back. He's going to he's going to take one back if Joe's not careful. So we'll see what Coach Heupel and the staff can dial up on Saturday. Let's see. Isaac's checking in. Says Vol fan here. A&M should be more mad about last Saturday's officiating. Probably so. It was very inconsistent, really both sides. But yeah, but we got away some stuff there, and we probably should have got some more at the same time. But right now, Toby says, who's the best team right now besides Georgia? I think it's the Washington Huskies. They had a huge win on Saturday against Oregon. I really like this Washington team. I mean, we'll see what happens, once they get really deep into Pac-12 play, which that was a big game against Oregon. But I really like Washington. I think, to me, they are probably the hottest team right now. Very, very reminiscent of Tennessee last year. Brad says Joe doesn't have the stats to be acting that way. Yeah. Greg says everyone's blaming Milton, needs to listen to Ainge and Swain on their take of this. It's definitely not Milton's fault. Some of it is his, but it is bigger than that. Okay. Now check that out. And I like Joe, and I'll go ahead. I like Joe Milton as a person, and I think at times he can be a good football player. It's just my thought of Joe Milton is he's got all the tools in the tool chest. It's just at times he just doesn't know how to fully use them, and I think that's what really hurts him throughout the throughout the games. And, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I hope he turns it around. I want to see that Joe Milton from the Orange Bowl every week. And, it's just at times it hasn't really brought to fruition. Let's see. And Shane says, when you're throwing behind your receiver and slanting routes, that's high school stuff, and he's missing. That's a fact. Yep. I agree, Shane. And I actually talked to a high school coach this past week, and he notices that too. He's like, you have to learn that stuff even by high school. And he talked about the number one thing he tells his quarterback is how many safeties are out there, where your safeties are lined up at. And it's just, I just don't know if he's got it, but we'll see. Hopefully he can get it turned around. Let's see. Brad agreed with me on the Washington. Toby says Ohio State sucks. Yeah, I mean they're hanging in the top 5, but they haven't set the world on fire too. Kind of similar to Georgia, but they got a big game against Penn State, so we'll learn a lot more about them. Timothy says it would be sweet if we beat Bama 2 years in a row, but I doubt. But you never know. Yeah, I mean I think this can be a close game, Timothy. I think it would definitely go into the fourth quarter, but I just think, you got the revenge factor on Alabama from last year. Nick Saban. I mean, we love Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel's a great coach. I just think Nick Saban's knows these scenarios, and it's hard to beat Saban 2 years in a row. It's very rarely happens. So, but you never know what happens. I mean, this is a different Alabama team compared to even 2-3 years ago when they were running roughshod throughout the SEC. I mean, this is a little bit. This is not the big bad scary Alabama teams that we face, but this is still a talented team. Toby says, hope everyone has a great night, everyone. I got to go. Go Vols, beat Bama. Have a good night, Toby. Thank you for tuning in. Greg says, we have not been physical on the outside at all year, and these guys do not know how to get separation. Yeah. And then the times that we do get separation and break wide open, we overthrow our passes or have a drop pass, or we don't see it. So it's been frustrating the passing game throughout the whole season. But like I said, thank goodness the running game is carry the load. We could be in a lot worse shape. I'll say that. Brad says our defense has been decent. Special teams has been great. But what's been lacking passing game? Joe needs to have a big game or we lose Saturday. Absolutely. Shane says facts. Defensive front has got to keep pressure. And he's talking about on Jalen Milroe. Absolutely. Milroe's going to be he's going to be a key factor in this game. Let's see here. Brad says Bama's not good. We can definitely win. Timothy says last year the Vols were a lot faster. Absolutely. I mean, and you got to keep in mind, last year we had Hendon Hooker, who's now on the Lions. You got Jalen Hyatt, Biletnikoff winner, now at the Giants. Cedric Tillman, off to the NFL. So, and Darnell Wright, top 5 draft picks. So, I mean, yeah, they were a lot faster. And, we just got unfortunately, just lost a lot of talent on the offensive side. And seeing that Orange Bowl game when Hyatt decided not to play, and we pretty much saw – this year's roster in that Orange Bowl game, we're thinking, man, 2023, just picking it right back up. And unfortunately, not so much besides, like I said, for the running game and some, maybe some offensive line issues. Let's see here. Nathan says, what do we do when Alabama stacks and shuts the run game down? Can we trust Milton? That's the $1 million question here, Nathan. I just don't think that's going to I don't know if I really trust him. I mean, Milton can run, but, we saw Saturday Milton running out of bounds on a on a penalty where he could have got a first down easily, and another time he ran out of bounds on fourth down. It's just like the mentality has got to be there. I think he's got it. It's just that's just the frustrating part. Greg says last year the offense carried the defense. This year Heupel made it clear, and we would be a running team. And what are we? Yeah, we are. I mean, we're a run first team. This is definitely not last year's team from last year. Chad says go Vols beat Bama. Milton Has got to show up and show out. All aspects got to be on point. Absolutely. Definitely so. Brad says he doesn't trust him. Timothy says Josh Heupel was a good, smart hire. Smart. Yeah, absolutely. Heupel is completely changed this program 180, and the timing was just perfect and everything, especially with transfer portal and NIL coming into play. Greg says, can we trust the wide receivers to make plays? I think we can. I like our wide receivers. It's just, you know, I like Squirrel. Keaton right now has been the big disappointment. Right, probably next to Dante Thornton, who was dressed out but didn't see the field. It seems like now they're trying to make Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb be a part of that 3 rotation deal with Squirrel White, or at least that's kind of what Milton's kind of going to, or maybe they're trusting. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, we talked about getting these new guys to step up some new blood, and here you go with Webb and Nimrod. Shane says, I'm not. So I'm bringing my son down for a student tailgate for the Connecticut game, and he's applying there in case he doesn't continue his football career after this year. He's a senior coming to Georgia and Vandy game also. That's awesome, Shane. Have a great time at all those games. Those were some pretty good games right there, and good luck to your son's future. Timothy says, "Why not start Nico at quarterback?" That's a good question. Basically, to me, I think the locker room really likes Joe as a leader and as a player, and I think if you kind of make that change right away, you could possibly separate the locker room or have a controversy in the locker room, and team may check out from it. So I feel like that's kind of where they're going with, instead of just making that quick change. Now obviously Heupel is not, just not going to ride Joe Milton all the way to the end. I'm sure he would love to, but I think it's going to come down to these next 2 games. And if we're still seeing a regression in Joe Milton, then I can see him make the change. But then again, on the other side, we have done a terrible job getting Nico snaps this year. We got in that rock fight with Austin Peay and had Joe Milton still out there and never put Nico in. Probably should have put Nico in. Obviously, we should have put Nico in the second half against UTSA. Didn't happen till like late in the fourth quarter, and he was just kind of cold when he went out there. So, and he's just, and like Greg says, I know we're getting a lot of comments here, but he said Nico's not ready, and like I said, we're not talented enough like Bama or Georgia. Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, I would love to see Nico. I would love to see Nico get as much playing time, but it's just right now the timing right now in the season, you just don't have that opportunity. Maybe you could see him against UConn if you get out to a big lead, but it's going to be tough. Right? Says he don't get Thornton at all. Let's see here. I'm trying to read all your comments. Y'all are doing a great job. I appreciate it. Wide receiver Timothy says wide receivers has been reliable thus far, full of potential, but few results. Absolutely. And Brad says he doesn't get Thornton at all. So odd. Yeah. I mean, pretty much. It's just been very inconsistent with the wide receivers at times. But they have contributed to a few plays this year, so we'll see what happens. Timothy says poor guy can catch a cold, skinny dipping during December in Tennessee River. Absolutely. Let's see here. Not only Greg says not only Thornton, but the guy Milton trusts more than any isn't catching the ball or making plays. Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to Ramel Keaton. I mean, even that we had another penalty, or Texas A&M had another penalty, had a free shot down the field, and Milton threw a great pass, and Keaton was right there, but just bounced off his hands. Lost a big touchdown there. I mean, I'm happy for the win we got against Texas A&M, but my goodness, that could have been a much bigger game, much bigger win. A blowout win is just lost some opportunities. Timothy says we couldn't win that Florida game. Probably the rest. If the refs didn't cheat. Well, uh, we kind of hurt ourselves there too, Timothy. The other Timothy says, let's not forget, though, if Milton hadn't got hurt, would we ever seen Hooker? Great point. I mean, we don't wish injury on anybody, even Joe Milton or Hendon Hooker or anybody, but that was just a blessing in the skies. Absolutely. Oh, Ronnie says, I'm glad there isn't any wrestling impersonations tonight. Yeah, that yeah, we don't have any tonight. It was that was a wild podcast we did, and we were recording it very late, and we got a little silly on that one, but still entertaining. Let me go back to Nathan's comments. If the team that played South Carolina shows up, we win Saturday. If the team that played Florida shows up, it's a loss. Yeah, it's just kind of one of those which Tennessee team's going to show up. I will say, I at least with Josh Heupel's teams, I'm a little bit more confident in, especially after Saturday, kind of winning these ugly games. It seems like now the losses with Heupel, it's like, we just get down big and by halftime and just can never dig ourselves out of a halftime deficit for the most part. So that's one thing I do have a little, I have confidence in Heupel and a lot of stuff, but the one thing I do have a little confidence in him is like even being down a touchdown or 10 points doesn't scare us like it has been before. So it's kind of a plus there. Let's see here. Greg says we are young for the most part and definitely intimidated on the road. Hopefully we've grown up since Florida, and the defense is going to continue to play lights out and get better week by week. Yeah, absolutely. The defense is just fantastic. Yeah, just I just love that defensive line. Love what Rodney Gardner's doing. I'm happy for James Pierce and Tyler Barron really stepping up, getting some sacks and having all SEC seasons, and Aaron Beasley looking good. And even with Peely being out, which by the way doesn't sound like he's coming back. So I'm happy for guys like Elijah Herring and Arian Carter filling those voids in there. And yeah, we'll see what team shows up. Timothy says I've seen a lot worse than Joe Milton. Yeah, I even talked about that on the podcast. The Auburn quarterback situation is a lot worse than what we have at Tennessee. They're just awful right now. And Greg says, I believe at some point the offense will click and never look back. I hope so. Back to Timothy H again. I was at the A&M game, and it felt too much like those heartbreaker Tennessees that have let get away. It was exciting to see the defense step up and give us that win. Yeah, I was there too, and I kind of made the joke to some friends. It's like kind of like watching a Big Ten game, and just kind of just sluggish and defense and trying to get some points, but I was happy for just grinding out and getting kind of an ugly win, even though a win's a win, and especially for Josh Heupel and his offense that he runs. Just so happy that he got his first win as a head coach when he scored less than 30 points a game, and maybe some of that's Jimbo not being inconsistent himself. It's just amazing. We had a score prediction here. Man, you are flying in these comments. I appreciate it. Nathan says 24-17 Vols. See, Greg says, but wide receivers and tight ends are going to have to get physical coming off the line and get separation. Absolutely. That's going to be a big, big thing. Timothy says, how about that? The touchdown against UTSA from Joe Milton. Yeah, great. That was a great play in that game. And of course, that's how our buddy Carlos got on the map with his electrifying call. And yeah, definitely the best offensive play so far this season, to my memory, is that Joe Milton run against UTSA. The Timothy says, on another note, if it was in field goal range, take the points. Yeah, there were some questionable calls from my personal perspective, and I think a lot of people had an opportunity. We were going for it on 4th and 2 and 4th and 7 and could have easily kicked a field goal. Charles Campbell's been very consistent. And then the one time we roll him out there for a long 51-yard field goal, he missed it. Yeah, I would have took the points. Your defense is playing fantastic. A&M wasn't answering anything. Take the points. It could have been 26 to, what was the final? 2013. 26-13. Yeah, you have to take them. What's the biggest? Keith says, what's the biggest difference since the Joe Milton show at Clemson and the Joe show now? That's a good question. I think, kind of looking back, I think Joe didn't have the pressure last year's, and even he had a pretty good game against Vanderbilt. It seemed like when Hendon went out, everybody's like, all right, Joe, this is your turn. And I think Tennessee was in a comfortable position. And I think the offense just had great chemistry. You still had Jalen Hyatt. You still had Tillman, even though he was banged up that year. And going into the Orange Bowl, I just think that team had some good chemistry. They knew what they were doing. And I think Joe just didn't have that pressure. Like, yeah, I'm the quarterback right now, and I'm going to be the quarterback next year, but we got 2 games left, and whatever happens, happens. And it just so happened, just had a great showing against Clemson in the Orange Bowl. And I just think Clemson's defense just couldn't keep up with our up-tempo offense. And, Joe just balled out. And now it just seems like once the pressure's back on him, he just can't capitalize. Nathan says, I agree, 3 points can be huge in this game, or in this Saturday's game. Yeah. Points are going to be very, very crucial. Brad saying 34-30 Vols on Saturday. Timothy says offensive coordinator. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. I don't mind. I'm not opposed to going for it on 4th down. It just depends on the scenario you're in. And I mean, it's just, you got to know the scenario in, you got to know what your opponent's doing. But anyways, Greg says this team needs to do most. Oh, well, let me start that again. This team needs to do most is take off when there's 5 in the box and on the outside. Yeah, absolutely. Ronnie says, realistic Tennessee fan, I think this team has some confidence going into the game. We have a defense that can make a difference in games. I believe in Coach Josh Heupel to come up with an offensive game plan. But I'm optimistic going into Saturday. But I also know Bama wants revenge. Yeah, this is a big game. Like I said, obviously for Alabama. They very, very interesting that they just barely squeaked by against Arkansas. I don't know if they were looking ahead to us. That would be awesome if they were looking ahead to us. When's the last time we've said that? But also, I think, it's just like Bama's had their issues throughout the whole year, too, even with offensive line help. I mean, let me see if it tells how many times Jalen Milroe has been sacked this year. I know it's been quite a bit. See all here. Yeah, Jalen Milroe has been sacked 26 times this year. I mean, that's quite a bit. So, and you look at Tennessee's defensive line and Tyler Barron and James Pierce and Elijah Simmons has really stepped up. I mean, they're going to go after him, and I think Tim Banks is going to draw up a good game plan to him. So we'll see what happens. Ronnie says 28-24. Tennessee steals one. Greg says this is definitely a winnable game. Bama is not Bama the last 6 or 7 years. Absolutely. Timothy L says, first funny how Georgia almost lost to South Carolina 24-14, and Georgia was losing 14-3, and Georgia almost to Auburn 27-20 in the Deep South. So, yeah, Georgia's been very inconsistent too. There's really not been a dominant team in the SEC this year. And, we mentioned this throughout the whole year. It's just like anybody can win any given Saturday at this point. It's just, I mean, like I said, Georgia hasn't been dominant. Alabama hasn't been dominant. Neither has Tennessee. So, and really just in general college football too. I mean, we talked about Washington. We've talked about, maybe Michigan has been good at times, but, they can easily slip up and lose one. I mean, at least with this college football season, I'm so happy that we don't have just a pure dominating team that's just number one in the polls, and they're just a juggernaut and beating teams by 30 points. It's a nice change to see that, especially next year when everybody's switching conferences and stuff. But it's probably the closest we've seen since like 2007. Now, granted, we didn't have these upsets every week, but we're getting teams being battle tested throughout the whole year, and this is going to be a fun journey to the end of the season. Uh, let's see. Ryan says our defensive line versus Bama's offensive line. Tennessee has the better line. We need to control Milroe. Absolutely. And he's a playmaker, a dual threat guy. Greg says, yeah, going to need spy for Milroe. Brad says this game is huge, truly a big deal for us. Ryan says to Greg, I'm thinking Beasley spies and does to Milroe what we did to Caleb Klubnik. Oh, okay. So actually 31, fifth most in the country. Okay. Thank you, Jason. Timothy says, I'm calling 7 sacks this Saturday by our Vols. I would love that. Absolutely. Brad says, there's no reason we can't win out. Every team is beatable this year. Absolutely. Timothy L. I'll read his real quick. Georgia blew out Kentucky 51-13, but also almost got beat by Vanderbilt, and not as fast as we were the last 2 years. Yeah, absolutely. And now with Bowers out, we'll see. Tracy says, is Brian Denny as loud as Neyland? Never been. I've never been either. I heard it's pretty loud for the most part, but I mean, I know, but I think Brian Denny just went over 100,000 fans when they remodeled their stadium. So I say it is fairly loud, but we got some very passionate fans too. So yeah, I say it's equal. Greg says I would love to see Pilly back. What a big help that would be. Yeah, it's just feel bad for him transferring from BYU. He's a 6-year guy and just got hurt and early on in the year and just has basically not come back. Jason says, the good thing about Saturday is all the pressure is on Bama and nobody thinks we are winning and we have nothing to lose. Yeah. Brad says that's a great point. Timothy's talking about Timothy else says the Austin Peay Tennessee game. Yeah. It was that wasn't a fun game either. That's kind of where all the problems have started, is going back to that game. We blew out Virginia that first week, and the next week it was, we saw what we saw what Milton did, and just kind of got an ugly game with them. But kudos to them because that was their biggest game of the year. Greg says I heard that our DBs in the spring and fall beat our wide receivers in one-on-one. So what does that tell you? Good point. Yeah, I remember reading all that, and I'm thinking, oh, finally our secondary has stepped up, and in a way they did, but I didn't know how much our wide receivers regress. Brad says, should we do a live show smoking our cigars if we win Saturday? And Timothy H says, absolutely. We did it last year. Of course, that was a significant programming win. So yeah, we'll do it again. If we get the win, we'll come back on Saturday night. And Brad will smoke a cigar. I don't smoke, but that would be huge. For those in the analytic departments and keep up with the projection wins, Alabama is a 76% chance of winning the game. So it's according to ESPN. So take that for what it's worth. But hey, we can always change that around. Let's see here. And I kind of wonder if that's still preseason because that's kind of high in my opinion. Timothy L says, wasn't we the first team to pick off Texas A&M twice? I think so. Timothy L. But, Brett says ESPN's a joke. I know. I think it was Timothy. I can't exactly remember, but I think we were. Keith says, I think we match up well defensively. Think the offense will show up on the road. Too hard to call, but I think we look better on paper. Can we contain Alabama's offense with our DBs and ends? Our defensive line should hold against the run. Uh, yeah, the offense is going to be the big key question there. Um, yeah, it's going to come down to Joe Milton's decision making. Like I said, I think I really like kind of what Alabama does a little bit defensively. I think I think both teams are even, and it could be a very similar situation with Texas A&M, except Alabama's I think a more well coached team. But like I said, we talked about the balance throughout the SEC. Anybody can win any given Saturday, but main thing is for us is we can't do what we did against Florida, have stupid penalties go against us. I mean, yeah, uh we're gonna see, some questionable calls. That's gonna happen, but we can't make it obvious against us. And we can't be back behind the chains also, because could it be an easy, quick 3 and out. But I do like our defense, and I think we can contain Jalen Milroe with our defensive lines. And even our DBs hasn't been awful. For the most part, we contained Spencer Rattler very well, contained Max Johnson very well. I think we can hold up against Milroe. Like I said, just we can't let him just break open and burn us. Tracy says, will we see Kamal on offense at all? Well, it's interesting you brought that up, because Josh Heupel mentioned about D. Williams being on offense, and he was in practice on the offensive side doing some trick plays and special packages for him, but we never saw it Saturday. So as far as Kamal goes, who knows? But I think I would probably trust D. Williams a little bit more on that side. I think Kamal is now become our number one defensive back, shutdown corner. He has really turned a complete 180 from in the last 3 weeks, especially with Danico Slaughter now coming back from injury, which totally forgot about him being hurt. But for me personally, I would love to see kind of D. Williams be kind of a little gizmo gadget out there, maybe similar to like Mecole Hardman and that at Georgia a few years ago, or maybe like a Tyreek Hill to compare like an NFL status. Just do whatever you want to with them. Let's see here. Brad says, all we know, there is no doubt we can win this game. If Joe can throw and wide receivers can catch, we win. We are good at everything else for the most part. Yeah. And then Jason says, Bama's just going to run the ball and take these shots all game. We have to be aggressive at corner. Yep. And we got to get our heads around deep balls. Yeah. That's the thing has been frustrating also with our defensive backs. Um, Even though I think they've improved somewhat, but we're still not turning our head around and looking back and trying to retrieve the ball or play good coverage. And Dee's pointed that out. We've just been coached badly on that one and getting called for pass interference calls and stuff like that. We cannot do Saturday. We're going to have to play aggressively. I would much rather get a bad call from the officials for us trying to get a pass interference call than make it obvious. You can't do that. Let's see here. Timothy L. Timothy L. says the special teams play in the middle of the second quarter when we went down at the goal line and set up D. Williams 9 yards to the house. Yeah, and D. Williams contributed to both of those plays there, Timothy. When we punted off, or Jackson Ross had that nice punt and it started sailing down. D. Williams was the one that caught it at the 1 yard line, and then he's the one that got the touchdown. He was a huge contributor for that. And then Tracy says, Brad says D. Williams is the man. Tracy says D. Williams would definitely give Bama's defense something new to think about. Yeah. That's what I would go with, and I think that's kind of what they're teasing. Now, will we see it out there? Hopefully, but you never know. But I think you need especially with Brew being out, you're going to have to still find innovative ways to push the ball down the field. I mean, I love our running backs, and they have been fantastic. Jalen Wright had a great game Saturday. Sampson has been good at times. Jabari Small's been great, but you know, if that running game gets shut down, you know, you're going to have to find something else to push you down the field if you're not going to completely rely on Joe Milton, and if we're continuing to water down the playbook for him, you're going to have. I mean, you got to find innovative ways. Now, it's also kind of you know, you're also kind of taking a risk because you know D Williams not going to get more touches if you go down that way, and could result into you know potential injury, which I hope that don't happen. But I think you're going to have to find a way to get that situated out. On the pick six with less than a minute. Oh, for the halftime. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's South Carolina. Yeah. Tracy says, I also think we should use Squirrel in the slot receiver position instead of always having being a deep threat. Yeah, that's interesting too. That's where I thought originally they were going to line him up at. I thought you would have Keaton and Brew be on the outside and have Squirrel in the slot and let Squirrel kind of do his thing. But they, for some reason, they use everybody else in the slot. But oh, okay, I got you there, Timothy. I thought that's what you meant for the pick six in the South Carolina game. Yeah, with Kamal Hadden. Yeah, but you know, maybe they'll do something now, especially with Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod. Maybe they'll put Squirrel back in the slot and do something with him. I mean, I mean, I'm glad he's going to get these deep balls, and he had you know some great catches, especially that game against South Carolina. But you know, Squirrel's also 5'9" and not even 200 pounds, and you're using him as a number one, number two wide receiver on them deep throws. I think Squirrel can contribute a little bit better in that offense than kind of what they're using them, in my opinion. Derek Dooley was a joke. Yeah, absolutely. Very much so. But that's days gone by. And we're in a lot better shape. Any other comments or questions? Y'all are done a great job. I'm trying to get all your questions and comments in and talking along the way. Timothy says Lane Kiffin did us wrong. Yeah. Once again, kind of the same thing with Dooley. It's kind of days gone by. I'm happy. So, Dwayne checking in, one of our favorite people. He says, "Whatever happened to that wide receiver came from Morgan? You talking about? Yeah, he's been hurt for the most part. Also just not really contributed. He had a couple drop passes early on in the year, and I just think there's some trust issues possibly. But you know, I want to see Thornton contribute to this offense. I just think the coaching staff is just not trusting him for some reason. Plus, being hurt and not really providing information why he was hurt. I know when all three of us went to the South Carolina game, he was not dressed out. It's just hasn't really translated for some crazy reason. Let's see here. Ronnie says, who would you rather have at QB, Milroe or Milton? Ooh, that's a good question. I guess decision making, I would probably go Milroe. And that's kind of that's the big negative part about Joe Milton's game is just his decision making and his football IQ awareness. I would probably have to go with Milroe. You know, to be honest with you. But I like Milton's size. And I like the deep arm. It's just the decision making is what hurts us. But yeah, I would have to go with Milroe. Keith says, I think Joe's biggest downfall is his arm strength. It seems he rockets the ball every play, whether it's 10 yards or 30 yards. Just like to find an equal medium with the throws or to catch a ball when it's coming at Mach 2. Yeah. I've even talked about that back in the summer. It's like, man, I love, you know, we're seeing all these videos of him throwing baseballs and basketballs and kind of being a sideshow a little bit. I'm thinking, yeah, that's cool. You got that deep arm and throw, a rocket, but you need once you're playing football, you need to throw a happy medium. Not everybody can catch those Joe Milton passes. Yeah, it's just going to be that's the key thing. Greg says Thornton's the guy we needed for physicality. He's a big guy. Yeah, I just wish we could find a way he can click it all together and coaching staff can trust him. For all the recruiting violations, yeah, terrible time. Jason says Nimrod actually played good Saturday. Yeah, he led the team in receptions. He did a great job, and I'm excited to see what he can contribute down the road. It seems like that's kind of who Milton's now trusting a little bit more, and Caleb Webb. And hey, two young guys right there. Greg says, hey, Keaton has not contributed either. He dropped two. Yeah, he has. Those two touchdown balls, especially last Saturday. That could, that was a penalty against Texas A&M. Free play, walk-in touchdown. I mean, we talked about the two field goals we should have had. I mean, there's 7 points right there. I mean, you only had 2 total touchdowns in the whole game, one from Texas A&M, one from Tennessee, and the rest are field goals. Yeah. I mean, and all I've heard about Keaton is like he wants to be an all-SEC wide receiver. Well, unfortunately, he's not contributing to that, and it's really suffering. Oh my goodness. Ronnie says Milroe had 2 completions. Had 2 completions in the second half last week, 2-10, I believe. And if we win Saturday and Joe has 3 completions, I will not care. Yeah, yeah. Milroe's. It's so amazing. Just that quarterback situation is just still not squared away for them. I mean, Milroe seems like their guy, but I go back to that South Florida game when it was all those delays and stuff, and Nick Saban pulled Milroe out and put Tyler Buckner in. He couldn't do anything. Put in Ty Simpson, couldn't do anything. Just went back to Milroe, and they're kind of riding with him. I think he's a little bit better than Milroe. I might right now a little bit better. I think he's better, but there are some similarities between Milroe and Milton. We'll see what happens. Timothy says, didn't Kiffin leave us in the middle of the night without telling the team? Yeah, he did. I just remember that was a crazy night, and like he did that real quick press conference, and like he wasn't taking any questions, and then took off to USC. So it's a crazy night. Brad says fill in the blank. We win the game Saturday. We blank. And Tracy says hold Alabama to 21 or less points. Yeah. Very much so. I would say for me is similar to last Saturday. Find a way to disrupt Jalen Milroe, sack. Okay. Okay, got you. Yeah, I think if we continue to sack Jalen Milroe, put him in 3rd and long, and I think turnovers are going to be a big thing, a big interception, and then find a way to score points. I can see a very similar situation we saw Saturday against Texas A&M. Obviously, doing it on the road is going to be a lot tougher. Ronnie says Golesh contacted Coach Josh Heupel and told him the secret to beating Bama. I hope that's true. and give credit to Alex Golesh. I mean, he even though they end up losing kind of significantly and they just don't have the talent like we do, but still, Alex Golesh, man, he done a great job containing them. I love it when we beat Bama. I love it when Bama loses, and they did against the Texas Longhorns and posted the Texas score. Yeah, that's a huge win for Texas, and they're still not out of it, even with the loss to Oklahoma. That's a huge win, and I have relatives in Texas, and I know they were excited about beating Alabama. Brad says, what is my prediction, Morrison? Okay, I am going to go with I want to pick Tennessee for the win, but I'm going to go Alabama 27, Tennessee 24. I think Bama's going to beat us by 3. I think it'd be kind of back and forth, a little bit more scoring. I want to go. I just, I just think Bama right now has that revenge factor and playing at home. I'm gonna go 27-24 Alabama. I'm sorry, I want to, but like to prove, I hope I'm wrong. That's every time I pick against Tennessee, I always say I hope I'm wrong. Um, Joey says I just hope the offense plays fairly. Yeah, absolutely. Ronnie says uh what kind of cigars are we smoking? uh, yeah, 27-24. I'm gonna go Alabama over Tennessee. Man. Since you picked Alabama, when we win, no cigar for you. Okay, that's fine. uh, Brad smoking. I have no idea how to pronounce this. Liga Privada #9. I hope I said that right. I'm not a cigar smoker. Brad's more better than I am. Oh, meant the referees. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I know. If the officials play better. Gotcha. Oh yeah. You did say officials. Okay. Yeah, I just didn't read that correctly. Yeah, I know it. That's going to be a big kind of a key factor, I guess. But main thing is don't make our penalties obvious. Let's see. Keith says, watch Bama against the run. We have 3 really good tailbacks. Can we put the same rushing numbers we did or better than A&M? Good question. Yeah, I think it'd be very similar. I mean, I think our offensive line just did a fantastic job opening it up, and it's just I'm just trying. I'm still just mind boggled. Like, A&M came into this game only averaging 84 rushing yards a game, or defending the run against 84 yards, and we just blew that out in the first quarter. And I think we can do the same thing. And I like how our running backs really got out in the space. They didn't run between the tackles a whole lot. They were kind of going around the end, especially Jalen Wright. Yeah, why not? I say continue to do that. I don't know if I mean 232 is a lot. Could it be manageable? Sure. Uh, Probably have a little bit less, I would say, but it still can happen. And Ronnie says we can't have pre-snap penalties. Yeah, especially playing on the road, dealing with crowd noise, all that. Timothy L says, "Don't think Georgia will three-peat?" I don't think so either. It's going to be very tough. Um, yeah, I'm still not sure who I'm going to pick to win the national championship this year. I think, like I said, Washington's really good. You still got the three-headed monster in the Big Ten: Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Even with Texas and Oklahoma still in the mix, it's going to be a wild end to the season. I probably have a little bit better answer next month at this time. Greg says 23-20 Vols. Man, everybody's going Tennessee. I feel terrible now. I don't want to. I really didn't want to go homer on this, but these picked Bama to win too. When we were doing, somebody had a question about what our win loss records is for the rest of the year. Timothy says Florida State. Florida State's really good too. That's another really good team. They played in some pretty big games so far this year, and they've answered everyone. I love Jordan Travis. Bryce says, bring a cigar with you Saturday, and we will go live and invite guests on the air with us. We'll see. We'll have to figure out who we can get. Timothy says Florida State is in the top 5. Yeah. Yeah, I love them. Yeah, I'm loving this Knowles team too. You got with Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, many others. Absolutely. Joey says I picked Tennessee by 3 points, whatever the score will be. Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to be a close game. Very similar to Texas A&M. I think you get a little bit more scoring than what you kind of saw Saturday, because I think Alabama's offense is a little bit better. But we'll see what happens. I mean, go ahead and kind of read you some Alabama stats here. I mean, obviously Jalen Milroe on the year, 1,300 yards passing, 1,397 to be exact. 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Been sacked over 20 times this year. McClellan, the running back, 454 yards rushing, averaging 4 yards a carry. Williams, backups, averaging 5 yards. Milrose's got 5 rushing touchdowns, so that's interesting there. And then their 2 best running backs, not Jalen Burton, Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bonds is who Milroe goes to quite a bit. I mean, Burton is a burner, averaging 23 yards per catch on the year. Definitely our DBs are going to have to be ready for that. But yeah, I think we can contain the run. It's just going to be, trying to get to Milroe and shutting down Burton and Bond and the tight ends and everybody else. It's going to be a big key factor. Let's see. Timothy says, talk about the embarrassment week 1 Clemson versus Duke game. Yeah, that was I wasn't shocked by the win, but I was surprised by it. I thought Clemson would have been a little bit better and kind of hung in there with Duke. Maybe a close game, but yeah, Duke is legit this year. I mean, Mike Enos has got a really good team. Riley Leonard's a great quarterback, probably playing better than Daniel Jones is right now for the Giants. But yeah, Duke is legit, and like I said, Clemson, they got they're in a lot worse shape than what Alabama and Georgia's in, because they've already got 2 losses, and they got a big game coming up against Miami on the road. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it was pretty nice to see that. Greg says UNC will have something to say about Florida State. That's going to be a good game too. I can't wait for that. Still, both teams still undefeated going into this game. Yeah. Brad says, "What's everyone eating on game day?" So definitely comment on that here, man. We're going almost an hour. Tracy says, any SEC team at home is hard to beat. I'm hoping we can beat Georgia at home this year. And I think now with Bowers being out, that's definitely made that game a whole lot more interesting. A lot more eyeballs will be on it. I mean, I thought it was going to be a big game either way, especially with the crowd and what happened with Alabama. Tennessee finally snapped the winning streak, and that's Alabama's biggest game, or Georgia's biggest game of the year. But now I think it's a little bit more interesting, especially Tennessee still controlling their destiny in the SEC East. Georgia's still in first place. I mean, yeah, you still got Missouri lingering in there, but I think the winner of the SEC East will be whoever wins that game in Knoxville that night between Georgia and Tennessee, unless Missouri says something about it. North Carolina, yeah, North Carolina's good there, Timothy, too. Drake May, great quarterback. Mac Brown, in my opinion, is early contention for National Coach of the Year. Maybe either him or Caleb DeBoer's at Washington. He says, Alabama's O-line is like the southern border wide open. Going to be a long game for Milton. How does Pierce match up in this game? I think Pierce can get to Milroe, and I think he can shut down these running backs. I really love what James Pierce Jr. has done this year. Definitely been a breakout star on this defense for this game. Greg says, they said Bowers will be back by then. Okay. Yeah, I guess 4 to 6 weeks. That's kind of in that time frame. But, I think with the injury very similar to Cedric Tillman. I mean, maybe Bowers has a quicker recovery, can get back, recover a lot faster than what Tillman did. But we know when Tillman came back, he just never really was that same wide receiver that dominated in 2021. So, we'll see what happens with that one. Timothy L says, Tennessee did snap 16-year losing streak to Bama last year. Yeah, they did. Very much so. It was a great game, and definitely one everybody's going to remember. And then, yeah, the Georgia Tech Miami game. That was a bonehead move by Mario Cristobal. Should have took the knee. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking there. 1 hour show. We have already eclipsed 1 hour tonight. according to Brad. Very good, guys. Thank you very much. And we'll keep if you continue to comment, we'll keep it going here. Jason says Pro Football Focus has James Pierce the #1 defensive player in the country. That is a huge accomplishment, right there. Hey, he's been great. I'm loving what James Pierce has done, and having an All-American type of season. I would have never thought that. I thought Pierce would have played, possibly start, but if you would have told me back at the beginning of the season James Pierce was going to have an All-American season, I would have probably thought you were crazy a little bit. But hey, kudos to him. Kudos to Ronnie Gardner, getting him ready. And I mean, yeah, he's going to be a top 5 draft pick whenever he's eligible. Bryson says we have a chance. Brock Bowers or no Brock Bowers. One person doesn't make the team. We need to focus on our own team before worrying about Georgia, Bama. So we are the Tennessee Vols. Focus on that. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point there, Bryson. Yeah, I mean, got to get through this game, and there's some tough teams. I know we talked about Georgia, and that's a big game coming up, and obviously this game Saturday is a huge game. But yeah, I agree. We need to focus on Kentucky. We need to focus on Missouri. They're in the top 20 right now. I mean, UConn, we should take care of them. That's a good tune-up game for Georgia, but definitely we got some tough ones coming up even after this game and before we see Georgia. The LSU Ole Miss game, yeah, I remember. Yeah, we were up in Knoxville with the South Carolina game and heard the score, and that was a wild game. And then Timothy says Louisville. Yeah, Louisville's had a really good season. Jeff Brom is their first year head coach. They're not playing Florida State or Clemson on their schedule. They missed them, but then they went to Pittsburgh last week, a 1-win Pittsburgh team, and ran out of the stadium to them. So I think a little bit, and plus they got that win over Notre Dame. So I think it's just kind of a snap back to reality for them. But they're still a solid team. Bryson says, kudos to our running backs against A&M. Great effort. Absolutely. I mean, they huge contributors in that game. Very, very happy what they did, especially in that first quarter, getting 87 yards rushing in that first quarter, and then end up with over 233 yards in that game. Brad says, if I had to pick today who's playing in the SEC championship, or if you had to pick today who's playing the SEC championship game, I guess Georgia, Bama for right now. I know it's kind of the easy answer. I mean, that West is still kind of wide open, but a lot of teams already took some losses. Alabama still hasn't took an SEC loss yet. Ole Miss has already lost a game. A&M, they're out of contention. LSU's only lost one. So I think Georgia, Bama for right now. Who knows? It could be Tennessee, Bama. We could possibly see this team again in Atlanta. Right? It says Vols are playing in Atlanta. Keith says, what are the chances that Heupel opens up the playbook to this game? I think Heupel wants to open this playbook up, but I just think they unfortunately watered it down so much for Joe Milton that they're trying not to hurt him too much, and that's the frustrating part. I think Heupel wants to open it up, and I think Joey Heisel wants to open it up. I just think they've just, unfortunately, the quarterback situation we're in, they've just watered it down for him so that they don't make him look as bad as he is. Timothy says Georgia, Bama, the ACC championship. Tracy says Heupel's aggressive, but he will be conservative, Joe, for the most of the game. Yep. Timothy says national championship game, Georgia and Michigan. And then Brad says, bingo, buddy. Bryson says SEC championship is pretty much open in the West. Yeah, definitely so. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Ole Miss gets into Atlanta. It wouldn't shock me if LSU gets back. Bama's in there. I mean, Arkansas's already lost 3 or 4 games already. Mississippi State, they're winless right now in the conference. So, obviously you can write those teams out. Auburn, same way. Um, Vanderbilt and another one, but of course they're in the East. But yeah, it's pretty much still open in the West. Uh, Jason said if we had last year's offense with this D line, I know it. I mean, we would be. I've even talked about this people at my work. It's like, man, if obviously you can't control people's ages and eligibility and stuff, but it's like, man, what if you had Hendon Hooker back and you had Tillman back and Jalen Hyatt back and all these guys back, and with this year's team, I mean, you would definitely be in the top 5, maybe top 3. You'd be right up there with the Washingtons and Georgias and Michigans and Ohio States and stuff. Yeah, man, it's just it's you. I mean, you would be 5-0. I think you definitely would have got that Florida win. You would have blew out Florida. And Timothy says, I'm all Vol fan. Yeah, absolutely. I figured so. Yeah, we love the Vols too, and we're passionate about it. Gregory says, evening, David in chat room. Good evening to you, sir. Yeah, Vanderbilt the worst record in the SEC. And then Brad says, if we had Hooker too, wow. I know. I really miss Hendon Hooker, and it's kind of one of those scenarios. Hopefully Nico works out well and puts up some good numbers, and then maybe Jake Merklinger, if you get a George McIntyre who comes to Tennessee and kind of builds up a quarterback but man, you're gonna definitely look back at those times with Hendon Hooker, and you're like, man, those are some great teams, similar to with Peyton and T. Martin and previous quarterbacks. Bryce says Nick will be good in time. Rager says everyone's still riding high from that win Saturday. Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think there's some concerns coming out of the game, but yeah, but it's a nice win, and like I said, I'm happy for Josh Heupel to find a way to win a game without putting up a lot of points. I mean, we still did decently offensively, but definitely, I'm happy for him to get kind of that scrappy win under his belt. Timothy says, imagine Josh Doss with this year. Yeah, I would love to see that 2016 Tennessee team with Heupel and Alvin Kamara and Jawan Jennings and all those guys in Heupel's offense. It'd be unstoppable. Bryson says, I'm not giving up on Joe Milton. I mean, think about who Hendon Hooker was before Tennessee. Don't know him. And if we go 10-2 or 9-3, I'm fine with that. I remember the days when all we had was a defense. Kirby Smart didn't start off undefeated, nor did Saban. Let's give Heupel a chance to bring us greatness. Yeah, that's a great point there, Bryson. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not riding off Heupel or really Milton too much. It's just I think I still think we're still in a great position, even like Brad said, to run the table. We can still win every game along the way. It's just that, like I said, everything's going to have to come together. But especially with the SEC being down, even Bama and Georgia, you can go in there and sneak it out and get a win. Keith says talk about the offensive coach and against the offensive coach between both games, how they compare in this game. Okay. Talking about our defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. If I'm reading that correctly there, Keith, I'm sorry. Gregory says, and I'm so impressed with our defense. Yeah. Pierce and Tyler Barron and Beasley, everybody doing good. Yeah. Timothy says Eric Berry and Jawan Jennings. Yeah. They'd be great too on the team. Let's see. Dwayne says on the way to win, on the way if we win. Easy for me to say. Millen has had his best game. Yeah. Joe Millen's definitely gonna have to have his best game. Saturday, at least build some confidence for him. But even that, like, we're going to have to find a way to really contain Jalen Milroe too. I still think we can probably scrape out kind of an ugly win, but you're not going to. But keep in mind, it's going to be a taller task compared to Jimbo Fisher and A&M. Yeah, Pierce is a beast. Oh, I guess you're talking about our coach. Okay. Yeah. So, so our defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. Yeah, I think it's going to come down to. No, I trust Tim Banks to dial up a great game plan against Milroe and stop the rushing attack. I'm just interested to see how our secondary can contain the wide receivers, and then as far as Joey Hassel goes, it's just going to kind of come down to how much they trust Joe Milton in the game. I like everybody else. Um, uh, Tennessee's, talking about Norman Lott. Yeah, Norman Lott came over from Arizona State, big pickup in the transfer portal in the game, or for the Tennessee Volunteers. Okay, let me read Keith's question. I'll go back to Bryson. Yeah, offense coordinator, defense coordinator, strengths going in. Yeah, I think strengths for Tim Banks. I just feel kind of confident of trying to contain Jalen Milroe. I think at times when he knows that he needs to bring pressure on quarterbacks, he does. Although there are times that I did question why he didn't pressure on Graham Mertz, but either way, he done a great job against Spencer Rattler, containing him. That's a good strength of his. Bringing pressure against Max Johnson, and then as far as like Joey House will go, his strengths is I think just with the running attack, knowing what kind of running plays to run, um, you executing the tight ends. I'm happy for Jacob Warren really contributing a lot more in the red zone. Seems like, you know, when Milton does know what he's doing, I think he's done a great job as far as obtaining him too. Bryson says we are doing great practice and more practice. The Georgia game last year was close in points. TCU only got 7 in the Natty last year against them. Wish Eric Berry would coach the defensive backs. Wednesday definitely had a crazy amount of pick six and interceptions. Yeah, that's a good point there. I think Eric's not doing much. Obviously, his NFL career is gone. I don't know if coaching is thing, but that would be that'd be interesting. Hopefully, I mean, at times Willie Martinez is a good defensive back coach, and then at times he's very frustrating to deal with. And it wouldn't shock me if somebody picks up Willie Martinez or he goes somewhere else. Seems like he kind of goes where he wants to do. But who knows? Greg's wondering how many rushing yards did Bama have against Texas A&M? I will tell you. Got Alabama's schedule right up here. So Alabama against Texas A&M. This was 2 weeks ago now. They had three. Oh no, it's receiving. They only had 23 rushing yards against Texas A&M. Jason McClellan was the leading rusher with 12 catches, 45 yards, and then Rodell Williams had 6 carries for 9 yards, and then Milroe was sacked 8 times for negative 31 yards. So, that's what my concern was going into that A&M game was, can our rushing attack get going? And yeah, that definitely was it. Timothy says, can't wait to see Boo Carter next year as Tennessee commit. Seen some highlights of him. I saw Boo Carter back in August at my alma mater. Really good player. We'll see if he still stays. Let's see how many sacks. We got Carlos's mother saying "Vamos Vols." Vamos Vols. Back to you. Saw that. Welcome. Let's see how many sacks did they give up. So yeah, Milroe was in that A&M game. Milroe was he had 8 carries for negative 31 yards. Let's see if I can find the team stats here. So I'm going to assume let's see here. Did he not he had a 12-yard rush in the game. So I'm going to assume probably like 6 times. Just kind of taking a wild guess, but he had a 12-yard rush in that game. Just kind of looking at the stats in there. Dolly Six from Brad. And then Timothy says, Vols 21, Alabama 14. Man, everybody's going with Tennessee. And I'm the bad guy on the whole show who went the other way. So, any other questions or comments? We have gone an hour and 16 minutes tonight. Normally we stop the show at 9, but man, y'all are still bringing it. Then again, we recorded our podcast till about 11 o'clock last night with all 3 of us, and that's where it went all cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs when we were doing it. Michael says we need a win because I've been talking trash to Alabama fans. Hashtag go Vols. Yes. That'd be great. Brad says, what a show. Great people in the chat. Yeah, y'all are doing fantastic tonight. So we had more rushing yards versus Texas A&M than the Bama did. Oh yeah, big time. Big time there, Timothy. Yeah, we had go back and look. Let me go back over here. Yeah, Tennessee against A&M rushing yardage. Wrong game, David. You hit Texas A&M. I hit South Carolina. Yeah, we had 232 yards rushing in that game. Yeah, 49 carries, 232 compared to Alabama when they had like 40 something. Kenneth says, "Go big orange." Brad says that's a great stat in that one. Yeah. So it's so amazing just looking at that. Of course, I kind of knew it going in. You know, we had 232 yards rushing, but no rushing touchdowns. Of course, the only touchdown in the game for Tennessee side was a catch from Jacob Warren. So unbelievable. Any other questions or comments? Oh man, hour and 18 minutes for the show. Yeah, another wild game, A&M versus Miami. Yeah, that was pretty wild. That was a big win for Miami. Kenneth says, rooting for my brother who was a huge Vol fan. He passed away, so keep it going in the family. Oh, my condolences to you. But yeah, sure your brother he'd be definitely with you on if he Saturday. Condolence to you. Thank you for sharing that. Brad says, because we played sloppy, putting it all together, and we are good. Yeah. Michael says, I have a meeting with Nancy Pelosi wearing an Alabama cheerleading uniform and been putting. Yeah, I saw that, Michael. That's pretty good. And we are good. Okay, got you. Yeah, I saw the Nancy Pelosi one. Kenneth says, thanks, guys. He was my best friend. Always watch the game together. Yeah. Yeah, I remember Kenneth just even last year's Alabama game, just thinking about people who have passed on since the 15 years of the losing streak, and just thinking, man, I wish so and so was here to see this, like my grandfather, or other people that I've known over the years. So I mean, you think about these big games and exciting when you win, but man, it also can be emotional too, especially in a win, and especially in your situation, with your brother and stuff. So, but our condolences to you. Yeah. Brad says, switching gears here, Bama joke of the day will be a good one tomorrow. Stay tuned. Yeah, Brad's been posting those every day on our Facebook page. And oh, by the way, for those on the Facebook page, you may have saw I accidentally went live last night for Tailgate Thursday. Uh, so for those a little peek behind the curtain, so Tailgate Thursday, I always record earlier in the week, and I always post it around lunchtime because I'm at work and I can't do it live on that Thursday. So I usually record it and then send the notification out later on the week. Well, I accidentally hit click live last night and it was shown live for about a good 15 seconds until I realized it right before we record the podcast. So if you saw that, ignore it. I think we cleared it out, but that was a funny blooper on my part. And Brad says, thanks for sharing. Boss size place, share anything, all family here. Yeah. Kenneth says, after the Bama win, I was like, man, he would be so excited and me and jumping all over the place. Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. Let's give a quick shout out before we kind of wrap it up here. Give a quick shout out to Carlos's mother. Leave us a like. Donna, Travis, Keith, Pam, Cobb County Mayor Rob Mathis leaving us a like. Joey, Kimberly, and 10 more that I can't read right now. And then Bryson, Debbie, Chad, Linda, and Red Toby's. Very much so. Well, guys, we have went almost an hour and a half tonight. Great show, everyone. Brad says, great show, everyone. Go Vols, let's get the win. And prove me wrong and why I should have never picked Bama. But anyways, thank you guys so much. Great show tonight. Appreciate each and every one of you. As always, take care of each other. Be kind to each other. Show hospitality everywhere you go. Continue to see Kenneth's Facebook page or profile picture of the Israel flag. Continue those thoughts and prayers to those folks in Israel. And just a horrible situation going on over there. Just keep those folks in your prayers and your thoughts throughout the week. And everyone else that's going through challenges of their own, physically, mentally, emotionally, be with them. Be with those folks also too. Yeah, and God bless. Yeah. Michael says, great show because I was in it. Yeah, you were in it, my friend. I'm glad you got to read it. And let me read Chad's really quick before we sign out of here. I seen that last night, and I was like, wait, had to check my calendar to make sure I was on the correct day. Go, yeah, that was on me. I accidentally clicked live early on. Ashley comes in and says, dang, I came too late, I guess. You're good. We read your comment. That's all that matters. But yeah, but appreciate you checking in here with us. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and kind of wrap it up. Like I said, Tailgate Thursday, what I was trying to do last night, it will be uploaded, edited, and all that fun stuff. Thursday around 12:30 on our Facebook page. We got some great content coming up throughout the weekend. The Bama joke of the day. And then we always have Josh Heupel's press conference every Monday on the Facebook page. Also, when you're on the Facebook page, click the Shop Now button. Get you some Vol Society merchandise. Like I said, weather's getting a little cooler out there. We got some hoodies. We got some good cold weather gear and stuff like that. And then other accessories and stuff like that. Also, the podcast, Good Old Rocky Talk, with myself, the founder of Vol Society, Brad Frank, David Dees. We talked about the Alabama game, and then we kind of went off the rails with our wrestling impressions, and it was kind of a complete opposite show when we had Carlos on, but it was all fun and good. But we'll have another episode of the podcast, and also with Kentucky Week, I'll talk about a particular band that I went to a show in Knoxville that got us confused with the University of Kentucky, and I'll talk about that on the podcast, and I'll talk about it here next week too. But anyways, Kenneth says, win or lose, checkerboard, orange and white for life, good old Rocky Top, 100%. Absolutely. That's a good way to end it right there, Kenneth. Until next time, this is David Morrison for Good Old Rocky Talk, or Good Old Rocky Talk, for Vol Society Live. Oh, man, this is getting late. Have a great night. Be kind to each other, and go Vols.